even though I took care of Mom for 6 years with everything I had.
My husband, choking up, said those words during his speech as the chief mourner at his mother's funeral. What? Who is he kidding? I watched him with a blank expression as he stood at the microphone, pressing a handkerchief to his eyes to hide the tears that weren't even there. I reached into my pocket and felt for the item I'd hidden there. It's almost time, isn't it? The mask of the poor son who lost his mother after years of caring for her would soon come off. It was 6 years ago when my husband suddenly announced that we would be living with his mother.
Mom collapsed. She must feel anxious being alone, so we'll take care of her at home.
My life of caring for my mother-in-law started with those words. Luckily, my husband and I didn't have children, so we had enough rooms in the house to accommodate her without much trouble. Having lost my own parents in a traffic accident at a young age, I wanted to do my best for my in-laws. But apparently, I was the only one who felt that way.
I'll be home late again today, so look after Mom, will you?
What? Again? What are you doing so late every night?
Work, obviously.
You've never had to work this late before. And besides, you're the one who insisted on living with your mom, so how can you dump all the caregiving on me?
Putting her in a home would cost money, wouldn't it? If you take care of her, it's free, right?
What the? So that's why you brought her here?
Stop complaining! It's easier for women to deal with each other anyway, isn't it?
He shamelessly brushed off my complaints. From that point on, he never helped with his mother's care, and the days when he didn't return until after midnight became more frequent. 2 months into living with my mother-in-law, I was exhausted from caregiving every day. Meanwhile, my husband's skin had somehow become glowing and radiant. Nearing 50, he had started using cologne he'd never worn before, and each morning, he hummed while styling his hair, practically announcing, "I'm having an affair."
Can't you clean yourself up a little? Aren't you embarrassed to walk around looking like a rag in those shabby clothes without any makeup?
I don't have time to put on makeup when I'm caregiving from morning till night, and I have to wear something practical. Whose fault do you think that is?
Stop screeching! It's only natural for a wife to take care of her husband's mother.
Of course not. And besides, your mom never listens to a word I say. She's so demanding. It's ridiculous, both of you. My prideful mother-in-law couldn't stand being cared for by someone else, so we constantly fought. She never once thanked me. But no matter how much I directed my frustration at my husband, it only made him more irritated. He began criticizing the meals I made, and eventually, he wouldn't take a single bite, tossing the food away instead. Even though I was being treated so cruelly, I had nowhere else to go, having no family of my own. I'm sure my husband knew that and used it to his advantage. It was as if I could hear him saying, "You have no choice but to stay here." 5 years passed, and I was still the only one caring for my mother-in-law. Then, one day, she started complaining of feeling unwell, and after visiting the hospital, it was revealed that she had a severe illness. Her condition had already progressed significantly, and the doctor gave her a prognosis of 6 months to live, leaving us with a choice between hospitalization or home care.
If it's already too late, what's the point? Hospitalizing her would just be a waste of money. Home care is the only option.
Hey, Don't make it sound so simple. Are you going to take care of her then?
What? You've been the one taking care of her all this time, so you're responsible till the end.
At least for once, act like her son in her final days.
Oh sure, I'll pray to God to put her out of her misery quickly. How's that? I'm the perfect son, aren't I?
I couldn't find the words to respond to my husband, who puffed up with pride. So, this grueling caregiving would finally end soon. That thought crossed my mind for a moment. Looking back on the 6 years I had spent tirelessly caring for her, I was filled with mixed emotions. But my husband, oblivious to what I was feeling, continued to happily visit his mistress. However, around 3 months after my mother-in-law was given her terminal prognosis, I noticed a change in my husband. Occasionally, he started visiting his mother's room, spending several minutes with her. Could even someone like him become gentle when his mother's end was near? Not wanting to intrude on their private time together, I made it a point to avoid going near the room when my husband was with her. Having lost my own parents suddenly in an accident, without the chance to say goodbye, I found myself, shamefully, feeling envious of the precious time they had left together. That day, like always, I brought food to my mother-in-law's room. Just as I was about to leave, she suddenly called out to me.
May I have a moment?
30 minutes later, when I returned to the living room, I must have looked completely out of sorts.
Hey, what's up? Did something weird happen?
Huh? Oh, no. It's nothing. Even my normally indifferent husband noticed something was off and asked me. Feeling like I couldn't keep my composure, I quickly said, "I'm going to run out for a bit of shopping," and hurried out of the house. As I walked aimlessly along the main street, I couldn't stop the tears from flowing as I recalled what my mother-in-law had told me in her room. 4 months later, my mother-in-law passed away. It had been a full year since she received her terminal diagnosis. Even when you know the end is coming, witnessing someone's final moments is an emotional blow. I kept myself busy, arranging the funeral and notifying relatives, trying to cope with the weight of it all. But my husband?
Make sure the funeral's the cheapest option.
After giving that one instruction, he didn't lift a finger to help. And then, to top it all off.
Where's my funeral suit?
Seriously? You're the host of the funeral. Pull yourself together.
What? The professionals handle everything, don't they? All I have to do is give a speech.
That's true, but what is with you? Your mother just died. Shouldn't you be a little more upset? I raised my voice in frustration, but he just smirked.
Nah, nothing to be upset about. More like pure relief.
What?
From my perspective, all I can think is finally. You know? They said she had 6 months to live, but how much longer was she planning to stick around?
I was speechless. As I started to walk away, knowing there was no point in talking to him anymore, my husband suddenly shouted.
Oh, right!
With exaggerated excitement, he pulled a divorce form from the drawer and slammed it on the table.
Here you go! Just need your signature, and we're done!
He was beaming.
Man, I've been waiting so long to hand this over. Now that Mom's gone, and I don't need you as a caregiver anymore. You're useless.
So, you want a divorce?
Of course! I've got a younger, prettier woman waiting for me. Let's wrap this up, shall we?
To him, his mother's funeral and our marriage were just inconveniences to deal with. Seeing that I wasn't responding, he seemed to take my silence as agreement and got even more excited.
Oh, and you probably didn't know, but despite how she looked, Mom had quite a bit of money saved up.
Really, is that so?
Yeah, and I, as her only son, inherit all of it. As for you, you get nothing. You and Mom never got along, right? She wouldn't be able to rest in peace if you got any of her money.
Let's talk about the divorce after the funeral. That's all I could manage to say in response to his self-satisfied monologue.
Well, I've handed over the papers, so that's that.
With that, he left the room. The funeral proceeded solemnly, with the relatives in attendance, until it was time for my husband's final speech as the host. With a serious expression, he stood before the microphone, gazing at his mother's portrait for a few moments before bowing deeply to the attendees.
Thank you all for coming today for my mother's funeral.
He began his speech in a trembling voice, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief, and I could hear quiet sobbing from the crowd. After pausing for dramatic effect, he continued. Everyone knew about his mother's illness, so my husband made sure to talk about the struggle of her long battle with the disease. And then, at the very end of his speech, he said something unbelievable.
For 6 long years, ever since my mother's diagnosis, I've given everything I had to care for her, but, sadly, we've now come to this day.
He paused again, this time pretending to choke back tears, his head bowed in sorrow. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Which mouth is spitting out this nonsense? No one knew that it was me who had been left alone to handle my mother-in-law's care all these years. The relatives, oblivious to the truth, only saw my husband as a devoted son, and the room grew heavier with grief. It's about time, isn't it? I slipped my hand into my pocket and felt the small object I had stashed there. Slowly, I pulled it out. My husband's masquerade as the tragic son who lost his mother after years of devoted care was about to be over. I stood up suddenly from my chair, catching everyone's attention. Excuse me, everyone. Would you like to hear a message from my mother-in-law in heaven? Gasps of surprise rippled through the room as all eyes turned toward me. Even my husband's face froze in shock as I raised my hand high, holding the voice recorder I had kept hidden, and pressed play. As soon as the recording of my mother-in-law's voice began to echo through the silent room, the atmosphere shifted dramatically.
Thank you, everyone, for coming here for me today. I wonder if my son managed to give his speech as the head mourner properly. He's probably lying through his teeth, saying he took care of me all by himself.
At her words, relatives exchanged puzzled looks, and some furrowed their brows, casting glances toward my husband.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? This is a funeral! Stop it right now!
Oh, we're just getting started. Besides, this is what the guest of honor, your mother, requested.
What?
She asked me to play this during your speech. So, why don't you stay quiet and listen? Without giving him a chance to protest, I pressed the play button again. What followed was the truth of what had really been happening in our household. My mother-in-law's care had been my responsibility from the very beginning. My husband hadn't lifted a finger to help. Instead, He treated me cruelly and frequently ran off to see his mistress. My husband's face had been rigid up until this point, but suddenly he snorted and started grinning. With exaggerated gestures, he spread his arms wide, addressing the relatives.
Come on, folks! Surely you don't believe the ramblings of an old woman, do you? The truth is, over the last couple of months, my mother started saying all sorts of strange, nonsensical things.
How dare you say such a thing?
You too! Believing the ramblings of an old hag and airing this nonsense in front of everyone? Ridiculous!
How can you speak that way about your own mother?
Aha! I see what this is. You're trying to turn the relatives against me, so you can snatch the inheritance. Nice try, but you won't get away with it. Like I told you yesterday, not a single penny of my mother's estate is coming your way.
My husband was getting more and more worked up, practically snorting in anger. I had reached my limit. Actually, you're the one who won't be getting a penny.
What are you talking about?
Your mother disinherited you. Do you know what that means? You've lost all legal rights to her estate. It's written clearly in her will, which I've already handed over to the lawyer. The court has approved it too.
What? You're lying! Then what happens to the inheritance?
According to her will, I'll be inheriting everything.
What? You're a snake! How did you pull this off? You must have threatened my mother into it. You heartless witch!
Who's the real heartless one here? My voice, trembling with emotion, stopped my husband in his tracks. For a moment, he seemed taken aback by the tears welling up in my eyes. He had no idea what those tears meant. I took out a cell phone from my bag and stared him down. This is your mother's phone. If you want to know why the court disqualified you from inheriting her estate, you can hear it for yourself. There's a recording here that explains everything.
What's that supposed to mean?
I turned the volume all the way up so the relatives could hear and pressed play.
Hurry up and die already! Stop clinging to life like a coward! What's the point of you still being here? You've outlived your damn prognosis. If death isn't coming for you, go to it yourself.
The recording was filled with cruel words, unbearable to listen to, as well as sounds of my husband hitting his mother and throwing things at her. You know, a few months ago, when you started going into your mother's room more often, I was actually happy. I thought maybe, deep down, you were still her son. That you wanted to spend what little time she had left with her.
That's not! I mean...
But I was wrong. Your mother was fighting to live, even with only 6 months left to her name. And yet you...
Wait! Hold on! Why are you crying? I thought you hated her.
It was no surprise that my husband had misunderstood. Indeed, my mother-in-law and I argued constantly. At least for the first year after we started living together. But despite the frequent fights, as I continued to care for her in silence, she gradually began to open up to me. By the 3rd year, I was even confiding in her about my husband's infidelity. Still, I continued to speak poorly of her in front of my husband, pretending we were at odds. This act was actually something she had advised me to do. My mother-in-law was furious about my husband's cheating and had firmly declared that she didn't want him to inherit anything, especially considering he left all of her care to me. You thought you could say those awful things so easily because you believed my relationship with your mother was strained, right? You assumed it wouldn't reach me. But all this time, you were just dancing in the palm of her hand.
Damn it! You played dirty!
But why? You knew her time was limited, so there was no need to push her like that. This was the question that had come to my mind the moment I first heard the recordings from her phone. If he hadn't acted so cruelly, maybe he wouldn't have been disinherited. But that question was soon answered by his unthinkable confession.
The thing is, when they said she only had 6 months left, I figured that by then I'd get a huge inheritance. So I went crazy with that woman, spent a lot, even took on debt.
That woman? You mean your mistress?
Yeah, well,
Unbelievable.
but then Mom kept living past those 6 months, and the repayment deadline was getting closer. I was desperate.
I was utterly disgusted. I couldn't believe how rotten he had become. As I looked at him coldly, my husband's demeanor suddenly changed, and he started pleading with me.
Hey, you haven't submitted those divorce papers yet, have you? Let's not go through with it.
What are you talking about? Of course, we're getting divorced. That was your mother's final wish too. She wanted me to divorce you after the funeral.
No way! Please reconsider. Without the inheritance, I have no way to pay off my debts. Help me!
He was now desperately clinging to my legs, looking more pitiful than I had ever seen him. As I struggled to shake him off, one of the relatives shouted, "Enough!" Then, one by one, the people in the room began to voice their outrage against him. Not a single person was on his side anymore. In the end, 2 or 3 relatives grabbed him and dragged him out of the venue. 1 month after my mother-in-law's funeral, I finalized the inheritance process and divorced my husband. I demanded $20,000 in compensation from both him and his mistress. It turned out the woman was a coworker of his, and once their affair became known within the company, they both felt too uncomfortable to stay and ended up quitting. Thanks to the scandal, my husband was also cut off by all his relatives, leaving him with nowhere to turn. Now, he and his mistress, who has been abandoned by her family as well, live together. From what I hear, they work tirelessly from morning till night to pay off the debt from their wild spending and to cover the compensation they owe me. As for me, I used part of the inheritance to build a grand tomb for my mother-in-law. On the monthly anniversary of her passing, I bring her favorite flowers and update her on my life, which has become a small joy for me. Mom, one day, I'd like to be laid to rest in this tomb with you. Is that all right? I couldn't help but smile, imagining her familiar, slightly troubled expression as she says, "I suppose I have no choice." How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.